system to the rest of the world, John?
Well, let me attribute that. In any case that I attribute an effect to one cause. Obviously, if we had a week to talk, there are multiple causes, but the academic cause for that was a simultaneous discovery in late 19th century Italy by two, I'll call them sociologists, but I'm not sure that term existed then, two Italian public thinkers who operated independently of one another, but simultaneously hit on an explanation why no government in human history had managed to perpetuate itself for very long without being overthrown. And they came to the conclusion that independently again, that the people abused and exploited by these governments did what Hegel said they would do. They worked out ways to sabotage the ruling power and overthrow it, and then the whole procedure started again. So both Pareto, it's Vilfredo Pareto, and John Battista Mosca independently said the proper way to perpetuate a managerial class, a ruling order, is to draw away the children from the underclasses and sort through them and find the ones likeliest to become leaders, and then to seduce them with the privileges of the managerial class. And of course, what you say to the parents is, Rolf is really so far in advance of his classmates. We'd like to send him. We'll pay all the expenses to this private boarding school where he'll learn to be a leader and not a follower. And how can you resist that? And then if you move down the school ranks, there are lesser ways to say the same thing. We're going to transfer him to a better class or move him from one school to another because he's so superior. But it's chastening and at the same time brilliantly enlightening to go to these primary sources, which of course are in every good library in Europe and the United States, and actually see the ideas form that then are transferred into an institutional form.
Absolutely, and I mean, it's an ingenious philosophy, if you will, that has been playing out now then for a long time. And considering some of these latest things that you mentioned about the two Italian sociologists and so forth, does that mean that the form of government that we have currently, and in cahoots with that we have the corporate world, of course, and other factions as well, but does that to you mean that they are invincible? Are they now in a position where we, the people, in that sense, won't be able to overthrow them, do you think?
Well, it's a wonderful question, and I wish we had a pitcher of beer or ice tea, whatever. Let me say this, that in 1640, so 371 years ago, an advisor to the British king by the name of Thomas Hobbes wrote a book that will be in every university library in Sweden and probably in most of the public libraries, called The Leviathan. It was advice to the king, who now had the technology at hand to build a gigantic state. I mean, prior to the 17th century, you certainly had powerful political states, but the reach beyond the king went 20 or 30 miles. As far as the cavalry and the army could easily move, that's where the king was king. Beyond that, people said, yeah, the king, right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have any tax money for you. But in 1640, Thomas Hobbes, wrote to the king specific instructions about how to hold together a diverse, complex state. And he said, if I say the first thing, that's my own ordering, but the first thing in my mind, he said, is that where the power actually is has to be concealed from the people, because otherwise, as opposition grows, the people's force will be directed against, the right villain. He said, so what we have to have is in the church, in the government, in the military, figureheads in all the public positions, and the power being displaced so it's unreachable by a spasm of anger on the part of the people. I know that's been done in the American presidency. I mean, just recently, I have no brief one way or another. We have a two-party system, and one party that calls itself the Democrats is in the White House now and in many of the state houses. But in truth, an examination of the policies for the last 50 years show that not only are both parties very much identical, the families intermarry, but in addition to them being identical, the same groups contribute to the success of both parties.
That's right.
So that the news, someone from Scandinavia, the WikiLeaks fellow, has been doing, I think, human sanity a great favor by simply allowing you to draw your own conclusions about the motives of the people who make decisions. One thing certain is none of the narratives that are spoken to your people or to mine are in fact accurate. They've been devised in order to be psychologically palatable. And I don't know how old you are, and I don't need to know, but I'm 75, and I grew up during the Second World War, where the enemy had an army, a navy, and an air force, and they were pretty tough. Now we make wars against people with no army, no navy, no air force, no economy to speak of, no shoes, people whose prime weapons are to blow up their underwear and their feet. You know what I mean.
Right.
What's sold to the general public as political necessity is a show put on to keep an increasingly dysfunctional economy beating on all fours. Look at the American economy. I don't know how the Swedish economy works, but the American economy at the very top has a hamburger made out of noses, ears, eyeballs, feet, out of parts of the animal that never were used by many people in the past. This is the prime employer, and it's tied with so-called big box stores. I'm sure they're over there, but here they're Walmart and stores like that, which essentially are sheds filled with merchandise from the last few economies in the world that maintain an overt slave class, like China and India.
Yeah.
And maybe that's too crude, but I think the truth of it isn't hard to see. Our third form of income is building weaponry, and bombs and bullets, and selling it to both sides in every conflict on Earth. How on earth has this been concealed from a population that isn't the dumbest in the world, Without American, and you guys do a pretty good job too, but without Americans arms manufacturers, I mean, the wars of the earth would be fought with sticks and stones and slingshots. And from a capitalist point of view, what a marvelous commodity
Yeah.
that destroys itself